Every 5 years, the National Breeding Objective Review redefines what we're selecting for in dairy cows. Leading this discussion is Dr. Matt Shaffer, the one and only CEO of DataGene, as well as Tim Jelbart, a dairy farmer, Holstein breeder, and the newly minted chair of DataGene, yay, who's putting genetic insights into practice on his 1,100 cow dairy operation. So now let's welcome Matt and Tim with their presentation on the MBO review. What have we learned and what does the future look like? Welcome.
Thanks very much, Yi Cheng. And it's great to be back up here sharing the stage with my chairman. That's always fun for those of you in the room who know that's actually a lie. But we'll see how we go today. So we're going to talk about the NBO review, the National Breeding Objective Review. I'm going to skim over the top of this, and Tim is going to also skim over the top of this because there are far smarter people in the audience who can answer your really tough questions. So save all of those for later. Over drinks tonight, you can ask people like Tui and the Two Pete's and Michelle and all the people from Dairy Bio. They're the ones who actually know the good stuff. So Tim, I hear you are single-handedly responsible for the spike in butter prices. So how much butter do you put on your bread?
Yeah, probably some truth in that, Matt. I like a good, I'm going to talk old school here, quarter-inch slice of butter on a hot cross bun. So preferably it's thick enough that it doesn't melt on a hot cross bun. So yeah, I think in a way it's a circular economy. I'm producing milk and eating it, keeping myself going.
So it will surprise no one in the room that the big change coming with the NBO review is the fat to protein ratio. So that's been coming for a while. It's even more so now because Tim's eating more butter and he's reproducing and his kids are eating more butter. So there will be a change in the fat to protein ratio. So that's one of the big headlines. Unsurprisingly, there's a big change. The other point that I want to make about one of the things we learn, it's not broken, don't fix it. So basically we heard a lot of things about how the BPI was working, farmers were wanting their cows, we can tweak things, we can update things, but don't break what's not broken. So Tim, I'm going to turn over to you to talk a little bit about the process we went through.
Thanks, Matt. And I guess start by saying I've really enjoyed today and seeing the whole dairy community come together and all the exciting things that are going on. A lot of it's not necessarily new news, but it's just fantastic to see everything from dairy beef to the scientists to what's going on freestall barns. And it's just incredible that you think we're just milking cows. You go about your job producing milk, but sometimes you forget about this room and what's included. And even to the point where I thought it was quite pertinent. Obviously, you've been talking to Yi Cheng about her AI app for dressing. Looks immaculate all the time. I think you must have got her app to organise your wardrobe.
You're welcome, Yi Cheng.
So I think really I've had the benefit. My whole dairy career started in July 15. So in a way, my dairy career started when DataGene started, and I have only ever known Australian Breeding Values, or BPI, and I've been fortunate to be able to utilise those resources and benefit from significant genetic gain. We saw the chart in Jenny's speech earlier, that rapid genetic gain we've seen in our herd, been able to live and breathe it. And what I'm really excited about is I've been back 10 years and probably really only been focused for 5 to 7 years, and we've seen rapid gain. And I think what we're really looking to do now is, as an industry, we need to continue to adapt. And if we can't look ahead and look at what the challenges and opportunities are going forward, then we're not going to be a sustainable industry going forward. So I think it's important that we're really breeding for tomorrow's herd. What we've done isn't necessarily been wrong, but the things change. So what we're really trying to describe in the MBO, I guess, is what do we want our herds to be in 10 years' time?
So I think And we've done this before. This is our third one in this sort of style of doing it, Tim, and we've talked about how do we work with industry, how do we work with farmers, and how do we work with the brilliant scientists we have to come up with an index or multiple indices that combine all of those things into this wonderful little push me, pull me. And we know that there's no such thing as a free lunch unless you're Tim. And when you push one thing like production, we know what happens on the other side. Fertility falls. So we have to try to balance all of that up. So we do that by spending a lot of time consulting with farmers and with you in this room as industry. And we've gone through quite a process already to do so, listening to what you have to say, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what you think the future looks like. We also do things quite systematically, as you might expect for a science-based organization, Tim. We hire professional survey people to do surveys for us and interviews so that we don't bring our own bias to the questions and the answers. So we want to hear from you directly without the filters that we all have. So we work with Down to Earth, and they completed the survey and some really in-depth interviews where we were trying to make sure we understood what farmers and industry wanted. We also, for the first time, commissioned a study where we asked Joe Bills, who's speaking next, about what their view of both the past and historic price, milk and feed costs, and what the future looks like. So we wanted to try to see where the industry was going in the future, because that then impacts where we head. So out of all of that, and I'm just going to summarize these relatively quickly, there is a vast document that you are more than welcome to look at as we work through this over the next few months. But I've already said BPI, strong support. It's not broken. Don't fix it. There was a lot of support for a more focused seasonal calving pasture-based index. So there's a lot of support for HWI, the health-weighted index, but there was a feeling that we could go further to focus in on what the needs of these farmers were. There was also a surprising, from our perspective, a surprising focus on hot regions, for lack of a better word at this stage, further up in New South Wales, Queensland, and WA, where they were interested in looking for indexes that had things like heat tolerance in it. Picking up on the TMR from the last speaker, there was some interest in the TMR index. Now, there was little support, and we drilled down into this a bit more, and we'll come back to this as we go forward. But we were hearing some support for TMR, so we wanted to explore that a bit more. There was not a lot of support for a separate Jersey index. We already do certain things within the BPI for Jerseys already, and there was not a lot of support for a separate Jersey-only index. There's a lot of support for rolling the base. Now I can go into an explanation of what that means. I'll just assume you know what it means, and if not, come talk to smart people later, they'll tell you. But there was strong support to roll the base. We also learned what we weren't doing very well. And one of the things we weren't doing very well is we understand that farmers don't understand and industry don't understand feed saved. So we need to do a bit of reflection on how do we communicate better with you about what the feed saved breeding value actually does. A couple underlying things that also came up, Tim. Keep it simple. Don't complicate things. Genetics is complicated enough. Don't make it worse. And don't forget that production is important. It's still important. So we took all of that and we tested a whole range of options, about 36 different indices. We tested things like what happens when we add heat tolerance in. What happens when we add gestation length and calving ease into a seasonal calving index? One of the things we've heard for some time, and I think who in this room thinks that short teats are a problem in this industry? Well, all of you plus more answered the survey because it was quite an issue. So we tested whether we could put teat length into the index and drive change on teat length strength. It didn't work. You couldn't do it. So we have other tools that can help farmers breed for teat length and teat placement, and we need to look at how do we work with the extension team to make that clearer to farmers, because in the index it just got swamped and it just didn't work. We also tested things like what happens when you put all these things together in a hot region, what happens when you focus it on a TMR system, and what happens when you put it into a seasonal. Tested things like what happens when you move milk price, what happens if milk price falls, what happens if it rises. Energy costs, various survival weightings, how important it is, fertility weightings, and type trait weightings. So we tested a whole range of these issues. We also tested what happens when you move lactation length, put some emphasis on workability, feed saved, and cell count penalty threshold. So we tested all of these things, and we've come up with some recommendations that have now been approved by the Genetic Evaluation Standing Committee, and we're here today to talk about those, to start the process of consultation. So I'll quickly go through those. Tim, when you hear that we're going through this NBO review, what does that mean for you on your herd? In your little hobby farm?
Yeah, sure. I mean, probably one of the first things and foremost that I think about is, do we have a say? And like early on, it was, we're doing a review, it's going to be a bunch of scientists sitting in a room, and, we're going to get things driven to us that we're not necessarily want to do. But I guess what I've been really comfortable with is that I've been able to participate in the process, and I think as an industry we should be proud that we have an organisation that is allowing us to build what works for us in Australian conditions. And I think that, to me, I was probably worried about that. But Matt, you might sort of touch on like the scale of, before you move into the specific BPI thing, how far and wide did this process go?
Well, I think you should ask some of the team in the audience about how many people they've spoken to and how many meetings they've had, but there were hundreds of people who completed the survey work. We had multiple online sessions. Pete Williams and I got in a car and drove around and chatted to quite a few of you in the room, and we're looking forward to doing that again, Pete, so we need to get that organized again to talk about the actual implementation of these things. So we try to ask as many questions as we can to make sure that we understand what your view of the future is, what's important, how do you prioritize the traits, what do you think the next trait is coming, because this feeds into the work that we do with Dairy Bio and informs a discussion about what comes down that research pipeline in the future. So the new BPI that we're proposing, and this is compared to the current BPI, production continues to increase, production's still important. But the fat increase is much faster now, as you would expect because of the weighting.
The way I eat butter, I guess.
Yeah, well, you're still young enough to get away with that. Slower protein increase, same fertility, and slightly faster increase in survival and cell count. BPI is not broken. Don't fix it, update it, move on. Similar situation in the Jersey breed, faster fat increase, slower protein, and a slightly slower volume increase, but faster fertility, cell count, mastitis resistance. So that's on the BPI.
So Matt, I'm going to ask you, does this mean that we're going to see wholesale change to the index? Like, being a farmer, I'd like to keep things going. How does that sit with me from what you've seen in the science?
Are you telling me, Tim, you don't like change?
No, I like change, but usually when it's in a good way. So I'm hoping that, it seems like the research shows that you are accounting for that.
Yeah. So there will be change, and I'll come to some correlations in a minute, and we can talk specifically about the correlations, but because of the influence of fat and protein, that's going to make change. So bulls, for instance, that are low in fat will probably fall in their BPI ranking just because there's less weight on protein. So I think there will be changes.
That's all right. No, I think it's...
Buckle up.
Yeah, no, I'm a big believer that we need to, make change. Sometimes it's a slight backward step for a longer term gain, and I think, in our herd, I can see there being some cows that drop down, some cows that come up, but I think the message really needs to be that whilst there's change, it's hopefully providing opportunity and also to allow us to deal with the challenges that are facing us as well. So in our business and as an industry, I think we need to embrace change and accept that science and industry has supported this direction.
And I think what we heard in our consultation was that the HWI probably didn't go far enough to the seasonal pasture-based system. So We added things like calving yeast and gestation length into that, and what it does is it increases fat, so fat goes faster, protein also goes faster, and there's a faster improvement in survival and cell count with the proposed HWI, so it morphs a little bit more into a more strictly seasonal pasture-based system. Similar with jerseys, faster fat increase, faster fertility, cell count, mastitis resistance, and we've added gestation length, which improves. In terms of the sustainability index, we've got similar things. We've got a production increase, faster fat, slower protein, faster improvement in survival, cell count, and mastitis, and jerseys are a similar story on that. So when you look at genetics in your herd, Tim, which of the indices do you focus on? Or what do you focus on when you look at it?
I'm probably a bit different to most. I do like Excel, so I tend to blend a whole lot of indices together to make my own another indice. But I think the key is, and the message really is, for me, is that because of the amount of information that is available to us through the good work the scientists do and NBO's previously been and the data we've got, is you can really target breed for what suits your business. And so we do use BPI because we are production focused in some respect. We want healthy cows, so we've used HWI, we like longevity, but I sort of put a ranking on, I do put BPI as an upper end and then use daughter fertility, somatic cell count and others as lesser traits. Yeah. So we use a combination, but then when we get into breeding, we actually use more targeted traits and say there's a fertility deficiency in a certain spot. So I guess it's really that we are still BPI focused, that's the main index we use, but the beauty of the data is, and having a whole herd genomic tested, is we can really align that breeding philosophy to maximise genetic gain.
Fair enough. And just talk to Yi Cheng about how do you make your spreadsheet into an AI masterpiece?
Yeah, I will. Sounds good.
Correlations. So we all love correlations, not. But these figures, correlations, show us how closely two indices align. So a correlation of 1 would mean that they're effectively the same. A lower correlations mean there's a lot of difference. So with the BPI in 2024 to the new BPI that we're proposing in 2025, if you have a big difference, there'll be a lot of re-ranking. If you have a small difference, there won't be. So the correlation is 0.98, and that's across the population. That does not mean that there will not be re-ranking. There will still be re-ranking, and mainly driven by fat. So let's be clear, there will be re-ranking. You will see it in your herd, Tim. You'll see it in the bull list. You'll see it in the cows. But that's where the industry is heading. We're breeding for cows that are 5 and 10 years down the track, so we have to adjust. Now, in terms of HWI, the correlation is 0.85. But you would expect that if you think about adding in gestation length, calving ease, the tweaks to what the seasonal and pasture-based farmers told us, you expect that to be less correlated with the BPI. So we've answered that request, and so we're proposing an index that I think meets the needs that this group was telling us. So Team R. There was some discussion amongst the survey proponents and people we spoke to later about whether we needed a TMR index. We did a lot of work on this, Tim. We created one, we tweaked it. Yi Cheng and Abacus did a lot of work for us to enable us to have a look at this. We want more discussion with the industry around it. We're not proposing at this stage to introduce it, but we would look forward to talking with you on what you think of it. It does increase faster, production faster, but it's also slows survival, fertility, and cell count. So there's always a trade-off, and before we do anything, we want to make sure that people are happy there. On the hot regions index, for those farmers who were mostly interested in things like flat milk production, heat tolerance, etc., it's a much slower production response, because there's a negative correlation with heat tolerance, and that's some of the work that's going on within Dairy Bio at the moment to try to break that correlation apart a bit more. But it's a faster improvement in heat tolerance and mastitis resistance. So again, we're not proposing at this stage introduce a new index, but we want to have a discussion with the industry farmers about this. So Tim, how important is it from your point of view, being in Gippsland, where God's own country and it rains all the time and you always have lots of grass, how important is it to look at these other indices and the other types of indexes?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. It usually rains all the time, but not recently. I think what the message really is that every region has its challenges, and within dairy specific systems in Gippsland or Western Vic, there's challenges, and it's about exploring whole of industry, not tailoring for one specific breed. Or like what we're trying to do is actually create indices that helps everyone. So whilst we might not have a TMR index now, maybe more work, more things that go on, it's about exploring all the opportunities and working out where we can drive the most production gains across the industry. Ultimately, that's what it's about bringing the most people along and having something for everyone. Because there's no point trying to ram something down someone's throat they're never going to use. So, yeah, I think it's been really pleasing to see the work done in various systems. It's not something I've been exposed to, but it sort of shows the breadth of the research and the challenges that the teams put and tried to prosecute different ways of dealing with the same data.
And when we struggle with this thing about balancing simplicity with trying to meet everyone's needs. So this is a constant balance that we go through. And we heard quite clearly, as I said earlier on, keep it simple. Lots more indices don't necessarily make it simpler. So it's this balance we need to strike. So I'll turn over to Tim to talk about the next steps. So I just wanted to highlight the work that's gone on over the past few months. It's been almost 12 months now that we've been working on this. And Tim, from your perspective, what have you observed? You were chair of the Genetic Evaluation Committee until you ascended. So what did you observe about the process?
Yeah, I'm conscious that Yi Cheng's putting a bit of pressure on us now.
We're on the last slide, it's okay.
It's all right, we've got plenty of time, Yi Cheng.
We've got plenty of time.
No, I guess it was I was on the Genetic Evaluation Steering Committee and close to this process, and it was a new process for me. I'd never been part of it before, but as I sort of alluded to earlier in the conversation, just the amount of work the DataGene team's done to facilitate this process, and it's one that's taken a lot of time. All the industry consultation is incredible to get out there and actually sit with industry people in a variety of different situations. So from the start, it's been very well mapped out. The process has been aligned. The staff have been clearly across what they've been asked to do, and I think we've really got to a strong point where industry can be comfortable that no stone's been left unturned, and we've got a pathway for the next 5 years. Yes, there'll be challenges and opportunities that present themselves in the next 5 years, but it's about having a structure that we can work towards and then add to. So, yeah, I guess my credit really to the team, yourself, Matt, and the DataGene team in terms of the depth of work that's gone into that, and the other organisations that have contributed. And we're getting close to the finish line with the last step, so there's only another 9 months left till we roll some new things out. So, yeah, there's still a lot of water to go under the bridge, but I think it's definitely been a monumental task.
And I think with that, Tim, and thanks for the recognition for the staff, there is a lot of work involved, but I really want to extend thanks to all of you in the room who participated in this. It's an important process. It's one of the most important things we as an industry can do, is to set the forward direction for our national herd. So thank you for all of you who participated, and all the help we had from the various organizations in the room, including Ag Victoria, Dairy Bio, Gardner Foundation, DA. It's been a fantastic exercise in how we all work together. So we very cleverly not left a lot of time for questions, so we can have them over drinks. We're much more intelligent.
Okay.
Wasn't there another 5 minutes for question time on top of our talk, or not?
No, I'm sorry. That's why I'm shooing you off. But thank you very much, Matt and Tim. You did a great job. Well done.